Hi, and welcome back to Revenge Heat. My name is Claire Donnelly. I'm 31, I live in Austin, Texas, and I work in medical billing for a hospital network, which basically means I spend 8 hours a day making sure every dollar goes exactly where it's supposed to go. Numbers are my language. Discrepancies make my eye twitch, so when my younger sister texted me one afternoon from the parking lot of a Target and said, "Hey, I just grabbed gas on your card, hope that's okay." XO, I didn't panic. I figured it was maybe $30, maybe 40. Gas is gas. I was wrong. That night, sitting cross-legged on my bathroom floor because my brother was watching TV in the living room and I didn't want him to see my face when I opened the app, I found out it wasn't $40. It wasn't $100. Over the past 11 days, $6,800 had left my account in charges I didn't recognize, didn't authorize, and in some cases couldn't even figure out until I opened the confirmation emails one by one at 11:30 at night with my back against the bathtub. A resort booking, a spa package, 2 sets of AirPods, subscription boxes, clothing, a pair of boots from a boutique in Nashville that I'd never even heard of. The gas was in there too, $61. Like a signature on a painting I never agreed to pose for. I sat there for a long time, long enough for my brother to knock on the door and ask if I was okay. I told him I was fine. I told him I'd be out in a minute. He's 17, a junior in high school, and the reason I haven't moved to a smaller apartment even though I probably should. He came to live with me 2 years ago, after our mom got sick and things at home stopped being stable. Taking him in wasn't a question, it was just the next thing. That's how I tend to operate. Someone needs something, and I figure out how to make it work without making a lot of noise about it. I should have made more noise a lot sooner. My sister is 4 years younger than me. She's always been the one who moved through life like consequences were optional, charming enough to get out of most things, and just stubborn enough to outlast the rest. When she called me 6 weeks earlier, she sounded different. Tired. Her boyfriend of 2 years had lost his job, their sublease had ended, and they had nowhere solid to land. I listened to her for 20 minutes on my lunch break. I heard the real fear in her voice, the kind that doesn't perform. And I said yes. I told myself it would be 6 weeks, maybe 8. I had a 2-bedroom apartment, and my brother was in the second room, so they took the pull-out couch, and I rearranged the living space to give them some privacy. I added them to my grocery app. I told them to use my Netflix, my Hulu, my parking pass for the garage downstairs. I showed my sister where I kept the spare debit card, a secondary account I used for household stuff, and told her she could grab essentials if she needed to. Just let me know. Essentials. That word did a lot of work I didn't intend. The first 2 weeks felt almost normal. My sister cooked twice, which was twice more than I expected. Her boyfriend said he was applying for jobs and seemed to mean it. My brother tolerated the situation with the quiet dignity of a 17-year-old who has learned that adults are complicated and that sometimes the best thing to do is put on headphones. I worked, came home, paid the bills, told myself this was temporary. Then the essentials started expanding. The grocery app charges crept up, not dramatically, not all at once, just enough that I noticed and told myself it was fine because 4 people eat more than 2. The Uber Eats orders started showing up on evenings when I'd already bought food for the week. My sister's boyfriend mentioned he needed money for a job-related certification, and I transferred it without asking too many questions because he seemed serious, and I wanted to believe in that. My sister mentioned her hair appointment was coming up, and I said I'd cover it as a one-time thing, just because she'd had a rough stretch. I kept a running mental tab, the way you do when you believe someone is going to pay you back, when you believe the arrangement is temporary, when you've decided to be the kind of person who doesn't nickel and dime family. The tab had gotten very long before I ever thought to look at it. I have a rule about the emergency account. It's a separate savings linked to my main checking, and it has one job: to cover whatever my brother needs that insurance doesn't. He has asthma. Not the kind that's managed easily, the kind that put him in urgent care twice last year. The kind that means I keep an emergency inhaler in my purse, my car, and the kitchen drawer at all times. That account also holds the money I'm building toward the used car I've been putting off buying for 8 months because the timing never lines up. I don't touch that account. I don't let it connect to anything someone else could access. Or so I thought. What I hadn't realized was that when I added my sister to the household grocery account 2 years ago, a completely different account, one I'd since closed my bank's shared access feature, had quietly migrated some of her saved card data to my current profile. It wasn't malicious on the bank's part. It was a rollover from a permissions update I never noticed. And my sister had noticed. Maybe not all at once, maybe not with the intention of taking $6,800, but she'd noticed the card still worked, and somewhere between the spa booking and the resort weekend she'd planned, without telling me, she had decided that noticing was the same as permission. The gas charge was the last thing on the statement, the most recent. The one she texted me about like it was a footnote. I sat on that bathroom floor until my back ached, and then I stood up, washed my face, and went to bed. I didn't say anything that night. I didn't wake my brother up to tell him. I didn't text my sister. I opened a notes app and started writing down every charge with the date and the amount and the confirmation number where I had it. Then I made a list of every platform, every account, every saved card file that could be connected to her name or her access. I made another list of every item that might still be returnable. I fell asleep at 2 a.m. with my phone on my chest and a plan that was already taking shape. The next morning, she came into the kitchen while I was making coffee. Her boyfriend was still asleep. My brother had left early for school. She was in a good mood, wearing new slippers I didn't recognize, humming something under her breath as she opened the fridge. "Morning," she said, pulling out the creamer I'd bought 2 days ago. "Did you sleep okay? You went to bed early." I poured my coffee. I looked at her. I said, "We need to talk tonight, when Marcus is around." She tilted her head. "About what?" "The account," I said. Just that. I kept my voice even. The same voice I use when I'm on the phone with insurance adjusters who are trying to tell me a claim doesn't add up. Calm. Specific. Not interested in being talked out of anything. She blinked. "Okay," she said slowly. "You're being weird." I wasn't being weird. I was doing the same thing I did at work every single day, identifying where the numbers didn't match and tracing the discrepancy back to its source. The difference was that this time, the discrepancy had borrowed my credit history to book a spa weekend in San Marcos. I went to work. I called my bank from my car on my lunch break and flagged every charge I hadn't authorized, asked about my dispute options, and asked specifically about the access migration issue. The representative walked me through it, confirmed the oversight on the permissions rollover, and told me I had a strong case for the disputes. Then I went back inside and spent the rest of my afternoon doing my actual job, 'cause someone had to. After work, I stopped at 3 stores on the way home. The boutique in Nashville wasn't local, obviously, but the spa had sold a physical gift card I found tucked in my sister's coat pocket when I was hanging it up last week without thinking anything of it. The AirPods were still in their boxes on the kitchen shelf. The subscription boxes had arrived and were stacked by the door. I photographed everything with timestamps before I touched a single thing because I work in billing, and I understand documentation. By the time I got home, my brother was at the kitchen table doing homework, and my sister and her boyfriend were watching something on the living room TV. I set my bag down, said hi to my brother, asked him about his day, and started making dinner. Normal. Quiet. I needed one more evening before everything changed, because I needed my brother to be at a friend's house when the conversation happened, and I needed to be completely certain about my numbers before I opened my mouth. That night I texted my best friend and asked her to take my brother to dinner the following evening. I told her I had a family thing to handle. She didn't ask questions. She just said yes. She'd pick him up at 6. I spent the rest of that night finishing my documentation. I printed out 3 pages of bank statements, highlighted in yellow every charge I hadn't made. I printed the email confirmations I'd tracked to the shared household device, and to my sister's email address, which was still a secondary contact on my profile from when I'd added her to the old grocery account. I put the pages in a folder. I set the folder on my nightstand. Then I removed my card information from every shared platform, changed my passwords on everything, and transferred the remaining balance in the household account to my main savings. I closed the household account entirely. I disabled the access migration feature on my bank profile, a setting I hadn't known existed until that afternoon. It took until 1 a.m, When I was done, I felt the same way I feel when I close out a billing cycle that's been messy for weeks. Not good exactly, but steady, clear. Like all the variables were finally in their right columns. The following evening, after my best friend picked up my brother and the door closed behind them, I walked into the living room and sat down in the armchair across from the couch. My sister was scrolling on her phone. Her boyfriend looked up from his laptop. "I need both of you to put those down," I said. Something in my tone must have registered, because they both did it without arguing. I opened the folder on my lap and set it on the coffee table, so they could see the highlighted pages without me having to hand it to them. "This is my bank statement for the past 11 days, I said. "I've highlighted every charge I didn't make. The total is $6,800. My sister looked at the pages. Then she looked at me. Something moved across her face that she was trying not to show. "Claire, I'm going to finish first," I said. "Then you can talk." She closed her mouth. I went through it methodically. The resort booking, the spa, the AirPods, both pairs, the subscription boxes, the boutique order, the clothing apps, the Uber Eats runs that weren't mine, the gas $61. I said, "The only charge you told me about." I told them about the permissions rollover, how the access had migrated, how the card had been available in a way I hadn't intended and hadn't consented to. I told them that I had already contacted the bank, already begun the dispute process, and already removed every point of access from every shared account. When I finished, my sister leaned forward and said, "The card was there. It said it was the household card." I thought, "You thought what?" I asked. "That a household card meant anything you wanted it to?" "I thought you wouldn't mind," she said, and I could see her trying to find the version of events where she was the reasonable one. "You've been covering so much already. I figured a few things here and there." $6,800, I said. "That's not a few things here and there. That's the exact amount I've been building in my emergency account for your nephew's medical care and the car I need to get to work." The word nephew landed. My brother isn't her nephew by blood the way most people use the word, but she's known him since he was 14, and she knows what his asthma costs, and she knows what it meant for me to take him in. I watched her face change. Her boyfriend exhaled sharply and rubbed his jaw. "Okay," he said. "I didn't know the amount. I knew she'd used the card a few times, but I didn't—" "A few times," I said, looking at him. "Do you want me to read the dates out loud?" He didn't answer. "Here's what I need you both to understand," I said. "I didn't make a mistake. The bank made an administrative error with the permissions, and you used it. That's not a gray area. Using someone's payment information without their knowledge or consent is fraud. I'm not saying that to scare you. I'm saying it because I need you to understand that I am being generous right now by sitting here and talking instead of filing a police report, which I am legally entitled to do." My sister's eyes filled. "You wouldn't do that." "I would rather not," I said, "which is why we're talking. But I need you to understand the full picture before we figure out what happens next." The room was quiet for a moment. Her boyfriend's knee was bouncing. My sister was pressing her lips together the way she does when she's trying to decide whether to cry or fight. "I'm not going to fight with you," I said, before she could choose. "I'm not angry in the way you're expecting. I'm just done. Done absorbing this without saying anything. Done assuming that because I can technically cover something, that means it's okay for someone to take it." My sister wiped under her eye. "So what does that mean? You want us to leave?" "I want things to change," I said. "And here's what that looks like. Effective today, no one in this apartment has access to any of my financial accounts, cards, apps, or login information. Period. If you need something from the grocery store, you buy it. If you need gas, you figure out how to pay for it. I am not a shared resource, just because we share a last name." Her boyfriend started to say something about not having income yet, and I held up one hand. "That's the second thing," I said. "You have both been here for 6 weeks. I have not seen a single job offer, a single interview scheduled, a single concrete step toward income. I have seen the apartment get messier, the food I buy disappear faster, and my account balance go down. If you want to stay here, I need to see real progress toward leaving. Applications, callbacks, interviews, not plans, action." My sister's voice went a little sharp, It's not that easy out there, Claire. Jobs don't just fall into your lap. I know that, I said. I also know that Target is hiring. The grocery store 2 blocks over is hiring. There are delivery apps, cleaning services, admin temp work. I'm not asking you to find your dream career in the next 2 weeks. I'm asking you to bring in something. That's not my vibe, her boyfriend started. I looked at him, just looked. He stopped. You have 2 weeks, I said. 2 weeks to show me with action, not words. Not plans that you're taking this seriously. In that time, I expect you to start paying back what was taken. I don't need it all at once. I need to see that you understand it's owed. And I need to see you both moving toward your own financial independence. Because this apartment is not a permanent solution. My sister shook her head slowly. I can't believe you're giving us a deadline like we're strangers. I gave you my living room, I said. I gave you my grocery account, my parking, my Netflix, my time, and 6 weeks of patience while your name wasn't on a single bill. The deadline is the kindest thing I have left to offer. She didn't say anything after that. Her boyfriend went to bed without another word. She sat on the couch for a while after I went to my room, and I could hear her in there, not crying exactly, but making the kind of quiet sounds that people make when they're being forced to look at something they've been avoiding. My brother came home around 9:30. I was already in bed but not asleep. He knocked lightly and opened the door. Hey, you okay? Yeah, I said. Getting there. He nodded. Is it the sister thing? Mm-hmm. He leaned against the doorframe for a second. He's 17 and already too perceptive for his own comfort. Do you want me to do anything? No, I said. Just keep doing your thing. It's going to be fine. He looked at me for a moment longer than necessary, the way he does when he's deciding whether to believe me. Then he nodded once, said goodnight, and closed the door. That kid has more quiet dignity than most adults I know. Whatever I've been protecting in the last 2 years, it's mostly him. That's worth any uncomfortable conversation I have to sit through. The next morning, before they were awake, I drove to the electronics store with the AirPods. Both boxes, unopened, still sealed. Receipts matched to the order confirmation I'd printed. The associate didn't blink. Refund to the original card, she said. Processing within 3 to 5 business days. At the boutique, I handled the return for the boots by phone. Since it was an online order, I had the confirmation number, the shipping address, my name on the card. They emailed me a prepaid return label within the hour. I packed the boots myself from the box they'd been delivered in, still pristine, and dropped them at the UPS store, on my way to work. The spa gift card was trickier. It had been activated and partially used, which I hadn't known until I called. But because the purchase had been flagged in my dispute, they were cooperative. They refunded the unused balance to my account and flagged the card as closed. By the end of that day, I had recovered a little over $3,000 across returns and bank dispute credits. Not all of it, but enough to breathe differently. I came home to find her boyfriend filling out an application on his laptop at the kitchen table. I didn't say anything, just made dinner, set a plate in front of him, and went to help my brother with a college essay he'd been stuck on. Small things. Normal things. The apartment felt different, still uncomfortable, but honestly uncomfortable. The way a room feels when the furniture has finally been moved to where it was always supposed to be. On day 4, her boyfriend accepted a shift position at a distribution center and asked me for a ride to orientation. I drove him, not because we were past it, but because I'm not interested in punishing people for doing the right thing. He worked 2 shifts that week without complaining. My sister, for her part, signed up for a freelance platform and picked up 1 small project. Not enough to change anything, but movement. Real movement. The kind that costs something. Then on day 9, I came home to an apartment that smelled like takeout I hadn't ordered. A new candle burning on the kitchen counter new. I didn't buy it. And my sister on the couch, watching something while her boyfriend played a game in the background. She told me, brightly, that she'd gotten a call back from a boutique downtown, and she was thinking about whether to take it because the pay was low. I asked how the freelance project was going. She shrugged and said the client was being difficult. Her boyfriend mentioned the distribution job was fine, but the hours were rough, and he wasn't sure he could keep up. I didn't argue. I went to my room, opened my laptop, and updated the letter I'd drafted on day 1. That night after dinner, I put the letter on the table and sat down. 2 pages, typed, not handwritten. Everything we'd already discussed, plus a timeline. 7 days to finalize a move-out plan. I'd already spent an evening researching what they could actually afford: short-term furnished rentals, roommate finder apps, a few extended stay options within their budget if they started combining any income at all. I'd printed those out too, and paperclipped them to the back. My sister picked up the first page. Her boyfriend read it over her shoulder. Neither of them spoke for a minute. "You already found places," she said finally, staring at the second set of pages. "I found options," I said. "I wanted you to see that there are realistic ones. You've been planning this the whole time." Her voice wasn't angry. It was something quieter. Something I recognized as the first stage of someone finally accepting something they'd been refusing to look at. "I've been hoping I wouldn't need to use it," I said. "But yes, I prepared it, because I meant what I said." Her boyfriend set the pages down and was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, without looking up, "I get it. I don't like it, but I get it." That was more than I expected. My sister looked at me for a long time. There was something complicated in her face: embarrassment, and something closer to recognition, like she was seeing me in a way she'd been avoiding. "I didn't think about your brother," she said. "Like, I knew he was here, I knew you were taking care of him, but I didn't actually think about what it costs, what it takes. I just thought." She stopped. "I don't know what I thought. That you had it handled, I guess. That you always have it handled." "I do," I said, "but not because it's effortless. Because I work at it. Constantly. And I can't keep working at it for 5 people." She didn't argue. She nodded, slowly, and picked up the paper-clipped pages. They were gone within 10 days. It wasn't neat. Moving rarely is. There were 2 trips with a borrowed truck, a pile of stuff left by the door that they eventually came back for, a long silence between me and my sister the morning they loaded the last bags. But she hugged me before she left. Not a long hug, a brief, honest one. She said she was sorry. Not in the sprawling, defensive way she sometimes apologizes, but in a short sentence that had actual weight in it. I said I knew. I meant it. The apartment was quiet that evening, in a way it hadn't been in weeks. My brother made frozen pizza, and we ate it in the living room watching a movie he'd been wanting to show me for months, some action thing I'd never heard of. At one point, he paused it to ask if I needed to talk about anything. I told him no. I told him everything was handled. He unpaused the movie and threw a piece of crust at me from across the couch, and I laughed, and the apartment felt like mine again. Over the following weeks, the bank disputes resolved in my favor. Between the chargebacks, the returns, and the partial spa refund, I recovered $5,400 of the $6,800, not all of it. The resort deposit was non-refundable, past the cancellation window, and the subscriptions were gone. But $5,400 meant the emergency account was breathing again, meant I could schedule the car repair I'd been putting off, meant that the next time my brother needed his prescriptions, I wouldn't be doing math in the pharmacy parking lot. My sister texted me 3 weeks later to tell me she'd taken the boutique job and that her boyfriend had moved to full-time at the distribution center. She said they'd found a room to rent with a couple near her job. She asked if we could have coffee sometime. I said yes. Not right away, but eventually. There are things that take time to rebuild, and I think she understood that I wasn't shutting the door, just asking her to knock this time. People in my life have told me, at different points, that I'm too responsible, that I take on too much, that I should let other people figure things out for themselves. I used to hear that as a criticism. Now, I think it was just an incomplete sentence. The full sentence is, you're too responsible for everyone else, and not responsible enough to yourself. Here's what I know now that I didn't know 6 weeks ago. Generosity without limits isn't generosity. It's an open door with no address on it, and anyone can walk through. The people who love you will respect where the rooms start and end. The ones who don't will walk to the back of the house and help themselves to whatever's in the cabinets without turning a light on. It doesn't mean they're monsters. It means they never learned that yes isn't the same as take whatever you need. My brother is still here. He'll be here until he graduates, and probably longer if he needs it. And I will never once make him feel like a burden for that. But he's here because I chose it, with full information, and he knows it, and that changes everything about how it feels. If you're out there right now covering for someone who's treating your stability like a service, they subscribe to hear this. You are not required to keep paying for access to your own life. Drawing a line is not cruelty. It is the most honest thing you can do for both of you. And sometimes the person who needs the boundary the most is the one who will be the most relieved when you finally set it. Thank you for listening. I'll see you next time.